We were talking about this historical anomaly where we have these government shutdowns. While this generation might be getting kind of used to these things, they only picked up speed really in the 1990s. We had them in the past. I don't want to minimize that, but we certainly, the degree, the frequency, and even in the case of the 1995 one, the severity has been a more recent phenomenon. And she, posited the example. Imagine if we had something like that with Abraham Lincoln coming to power. Forget about the states that were leaving the Union. But then if on north of the border, we were talking about north of the southern border, we were talking about shutting down the entire United States government in the middle of that. Probably not wise to Wall Street Journal associate editor John Bussey on all of this. Her point was and is try to avoid this sort of stuff, be you a Republican or Democrat, but we keep doing it. What do you think?
Yeah, we do. We have a history of this. This is a particularly long one, longest on record. This is also something that the president right now is trying to shift the responsibility for more clearly to the Democrats. So you see that a lot in his language. He's likely to speak about it again when he's speaking at the Farm Convention in a few minutes. But the polls all show, pretty much all show, the majority of them do, that the public sees this as the president's responsibility, less the Democrats, more the president. And you've had two bills, one from Senate Republicans over the last several weeks, one from House Democrats that would open the government, that would address the wall in a separate measure, address funding for DHS in a separate measure, and the president's not willing to pursue those bills. So longest in history, something that he's going to talk about probably again today, and something perhaps he's going to be talking about, hopefully not, in the State of the Union. That's still a couple of weeks off. We hope that it's resolved by then.
I wonder if it will be. Let's say it's not. And let's say this drags on for quite a while. He's already ignored the advice of, a couple of Republican colleagues, Lindsey Graham, chief among them. Can we consider reopening the government for 3 weeks, see if we make any progress, then declare your emergency? Immediately dismiss that. And yet, other senators like Marco Rubio said, be careful what you wish for declaring an emergency. A Democratic president would do the same, let's say, for climate change, and this back and forth would continue ad nauseum.
Yeah, or it goes into the courts right away, and the president can blame the courts as opposed to what's going on in the White House. Look, it's not good for the economy. It's about $1 billion to $2 billion of lost productivity, lost output every week, according to Jeff Sparshott, who has a piece on this on WSJ.com right now. That's not a lot in a $20 trillion economy, but it adds up over the weeks. And it kind of sets a mood in the country when you have 380,000 furloughed federal employees, when you have farmers, who he's going to talk to in a few minutes, not getting data that they need from the Agriculture Department, not getting their subsidies.
But do you think the pendulum has changed on that? I'm not saying that the Republicans still are not getting blamed for this. They are, but the gap is narrowed a little bit. The sentiment seems to show that the number of Americans blaming Republicans and the president has drifted down a little bit through the course of this. Those blaming Democrats has ticked up. It's still heavily in favor of Republicans getting fingered for this. But I always argue, regardless of who's getting the blame, everybody's hurt.
Yeah, I think everybody is hurt. And the gap narrowing that you're describing is a pretty big gap. It's a long way for it to narrow. But the president's made a calculation. He made this promise on the campaign trail. He wants to follow through with it. The 2020 election is literally around the corner in the political world of Washington. He doesn't want to be going into that having a defeat on the wall, and so he's sticking to his guns.
But wouldn't an emergency help him with that base? He could go back to his base and say, all right, and you and I know the way these things are legally challenged. Maybe the first district court to take it up rejects it and the building would stop, but the president could always go back to that base and say, well, I tried.
Yes, he could. And that might encourage his base, that might satisfy his base, but his base is a minority of the electoral of the people who are going to be voting in 2020. He's got to be thinking about also getting independents. He's got to be thinking about getting moderates, people who are in the middle of the political spectrum that we saw in the midterm elections went heavily Democratic.
Right.
The seats in Orange County being a perfect example of that. He cannot just speak to his base. The people he's speaking to today, Neil, the farmers, are a lot of them his base in a lot of Trump states.
But increasingly an Nancy base. They're not quite the
That's right.
Overly aggressive base that they were.
That's right. And why is that? Because the trade negotiations have hurt them. It's hurt farm prices and exports to China. They were supposed to get subsidies to accommodate that loss. Those subsidies aren't now forthcoming because of the partial shutdown. Again, data out of the Agriculture Department that they need for spring planting process, that's now not forthcoming out of the Agriculture Department. So he's got to be concerned about elements of his base becoming less happy with the pursuit of this particular political agenda, and the larger part of the sort of electoral base out there perhaps turning even more skeptical, even more cynical.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it was trying to appease that base or address them prompted the change in strategy that Mitch McConnell had eyed to keep the government open while they sorted this out. That created this.
Yeah, and you've got to think also that in Congress also there are a lot of members of Congress who would like to side with the president and would like to support him on a range of policies that they agree with. They are perhaps in districts that are going to be touch and go in re-election. And are they going to side with the president as vehemently as he would like them to on this particular issue, which has proven divisive, and for which he does not have the majority of support of the nation?
All right, John, it's always a pleasure. Thank you, the Wall Street Journal Associate Editor, Fox News contributor, John Bussey.